In this tutorial, I will cover the hatch command in Autocad. Always check your units to make sure you know what you're working with. U and enter will open the drawing units. I'm in architectural, so that means I'm working with feet and inches. Next, I will create a few enclosed shapes to demonstrate how the hatch command works. The hatch command will only fill fully enclosed boundaries. It will not fill a shape that has any kind of opening in it. So in these shapes, I will try to fill with a pattern. Enter the hatch command by typing the hotkey H, enter. And there's two options to create a hatch. The first one is by selecting an object. You can see that's the default right now in the command line. Select object will let you choose one object, hit click or left click to apply it, enter to exit the command. And this has created one solid hatch pattern inside that square. The second way to create a hatch, also within the hatch command, is by picking an internal point. I can click this option here, or I can type K to use that method. And by hovering inside any enclosed shape, I can get a preview of what the hatch will look like. This will fill the entire space up until its boundary, independent of whether it's one object or several objects. Click once to apply, enter to exit the command. Now I have created two hatch patterns. These are even though they look solid white, they are in reality a very dense brick pattern. I know that because when I selected it, it came up here in the options as having been selected. In these options, I can change the pattern to a different one. This is a sand pattern. I'm going to change this other one to a solid. So this is truly a solid hatch. Hatches can be applied a color, but I highly recommend that you apply color by using a layer. So organize your hatches by layers and control your colors within the layer so that you manage the way they will print. Hatch patterns are objects, and as such, they can be selected, they can be copied, and they can be moved or deleted. You can control the scale of the pattern by selecting your hatch, going to the properties window. Remember that to open the properties window, you can type PR, enter. And with your hatch pattern selected, you can change the option for the scale, which is currently set at 100. I can change it to half of that, will be 50. We'll create a very dense pattern that is almost solid in this case, and might not be what I want. So increase the scale until you get the spacing of the pattern that you need. You can always go over to your layout view to get a preview of what it will look like when it's printed. Another very useful thing about hatches is that they often respond to the trim command. And I want to make emphasis on often because hatch is a very glitchy command. Throughout every version of AutoCAD, it has been very glitchy and difficult to work with. It has improved over the years, but it still does not respond the way it should to some commands. For the trim command, for example, going into the trim command, I can select a bounding box that overlaps my hatch, hit enter to select it, and then hover over a part of the hatch that you would like to trim away. This often works, but not always. AutoCAD seems to fail in certain patterns and certain scales make this command fail. So whenever that happens, I recommend drawing your shapes first and then filling the pattern later. Let's make a test. I don't know if this will work. I'm going to create a few islands within this shape and try to trim them away. And I'll make a copy of this to try it in two different ways. Okay, first, I will create a hatch on the left using the internal point option. If I choose the internal point and choose anywhere outside of these circles, it will create that hatch and avoid the circles, and that works very well. In this test on the right, I'm going to apply the hatch using the select objects option. Select the square, and you can see how it will fill the entire square and ignore the circles because they're not part of that object. But the circles are still in here, they're hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this pattern, which is a solid. Let's change this to a different pattern. All of these patterns are too dense and too close together, and they're hard to see. But there's one where I can see it. I'm going to try the trim command and select the circle. Hit enter when you're done selecting the circle, and then try to trim away the inside of the circle. See, this is not working. This is what I mean by it sometimes glitches. It should be trimming it away. So this was more effective if I wanted to create these islands. I'm going to move one of these circles, simply move it to the edge of the square and try trim again. Same way. I will select my boundary, which is the circle, hit enter, and then the pattern, and this time it did work. It's the same pattern, the same scale, but sometimes it works. Sometimes it has a very difficult time calculating and trimming, so the trim command sometimes fails like it did. So if this happens and you're trying to create islands within your pattern, try it this method, in which you create your islands, you draw them, and then you fill the rest of the space using the internal points option. That one is often going to work and not give you any trouble. The last thing I'll say about hatches is that you can apply the match properties command. MA is the shortcut key for match properties. Hit enter, and you can copy the properties of a source object, in this case, the hatch on the right, to apply them to a destination object, in this case, the hatch on the left. This can increase the speed at which you're working by avoiding having to change the scale and the pattern of each hatch individually. Simply draw your hatches and then match the properties from the one you want to keep to any other hatches with simple clicks. I hope this tutorial helps.